Senator Smith from Minnesota to start our questions.
Thank you very much, Chair Warren and Ranking Member Kennedy, and thank you so much to our testifiers here today. I am really grateful for your testimony. So I am very glad to see the FTC rule on non-competes, and I think the stories that you told, Dr. Toussaint and Ms. Haley Page, really demonstrate it. To think that with these non-competes, you would lose not only your livelihood, but even your identity because you're sort of trapped in this agreement that in many cases I hear over and over again, people don't even really understand what it is that they're signing and what long-term implications it has. I want to just turn first to Dr. Scherholz. Could you as I understand it, as you testified, 1 in 5 workers in this country have been covered by non-competes. Why is it important that the FTC rule covers such a very broad range of workers? Because I think maybe most Americans can sort of understand that if you were like a top-notch scientist working for a big company, that you shouldn't be able to take that, those trade secrets and go to another company. But that's not what we're talking about here, is it?
Oh, is this on? This is on.
Yeah.
So non-competes, the evidence shows that they are not just applying to people that are high, who make high wages, who may be the ones that are most likely to have access to trade secrets, that they really are even prevalent among very low wage workers. Like there's one study that shows that the median person who's affected by a non-compete is an hourly worker who makes $14 an hour. So they really do run the gamut. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is, it's really important to ban non-competes, though, across the board, not just for low-wage workers, but across the board. And one of the reasons is higher wage workers, they're the ones who are actually in the position to be the most likely to actually be able to negotiate. They're not the 25-year-old, right? Like they can potentially negotiate over their full employment package, including restrictive covenants like non-compete. So I'm less worried about the wage suppressing effects from non-competes among high wage workers, but I'm deeply worried about the other economic harms from non-competes amongst high wage workers. Reducing business formation, declines in productivity, declines in innovation, increases in prices. So it is incredibly important when we think about the broader economic impact that we have this very broad ban of non-compete.
So I want to get to sort of follow up on that because I think we could hear from Dr. Toussaint and Ms. Haley Page about the kind of the impact that this had on them. And I'm thinking about my home state of Minnesota. In 2023, the state passed a legislation to ban new non-compete clauses in employment agreements. And with that action, they became the 4th state to prohibit these clauses, a very important step forward. Interestingly, the Minneapolis Fed says, as you were testifying, they expect that this change will support worker mobility and also yield other economic benefits, as we've been talking about. But what was really interesting is as they talked with lower and middle wage workers, so maybe people just getting started out, people who were not at the senior executive level, who had worked under non-competes, here's what they found. That the stress and anxiety were common experiences for workers as they struggled to kind of figure out come to terms with what they had agreed to. There's a really interesting example of that with a cosmetologist. Cosmetologist leaves her employer. She was very careful not to tell her old clients that she was leaving and nor where she was going to work next. She was told, you can't even accept those clients. Again, unless you're providing a different service, like you're doing their hair instead of doing their makeup. And so some of those clients came to her, and then her previous employer reaches out to her and says, hey, stop it. You can't do any work for any of those people at all going forward. And of course, this creates huge worry and anxiety for her. I mean, how common do you see, I mean, this is maybe for any of you, how common do you think it is, this sort of level of intense worry and anxiety that this cosmetologist experienced, according to the Minneapolis Fed?
I'm happy to go first. I will. So it's very, very common. And one of the things that sort of underscores this is that non-competes actually have a chilling effect on worker mobility, on business formation, even in states where they are not enforceable. The very existence of a non-compete actually deters workers from leaving a job, from forming a new
You just
business.
don't feel like you have as much
For the reason
flexibility.
that you said, right? Like the threat, litigation is incredibly expensive, and both financially and otherwise. And it has just the threat of that is actually what businesses use to enforce their non-competes, right? Oftentimes rather than lawsuits themselves.
Thank you. I know I'm out of time, Mr. Chair, or I'm the
Thanks, Dean.
I'm the chair now.
Thanks, Dean. Dr. Toussaint, you're an orthopedic